Okay, this is a response to this gentleman going by the name of Von Helton and his little so-called history lesson. And I'd like to basically point out a couple of pointers. And of course, I know that there's going to be a little bit of Christian Taliban and bunch of white racist bastards who would probably jump on his wagon at any time. They don't like Jews or Spics or Kikes or anybody. But then again, since he's then again, like if not them, then probably Judeo-fascists or Christian Taliban that may also jump on his wagon. So of course there's no reasoning with these types of people. But then again, there are always other people who look beyond that, who are always rational, who don't mind looking at all types of history before coming to a conclusion. Now, I'd like to comment on this gentleman's video and his so-called history lesson that he happens to give. Well, let's start off with where he says that the Israel. Well, okay, let's just start off where he said that, oh, you know what, a lot of us weren't even born, and but he lived through all of this, and you know what, but at the same time, what this jackass doesn't understand is, what, there if maybe I may not be as old as you, but at least I've got the brain, and I've got a brain, and to use the internet to know that the media, whatever you grew up with, sipping down beer and I don't know, just sitting around that box, if not living in that with that box. You should have known. You figured it out by now. You should have figured it out by now that all this whatever media that is in the U.S. is controlled. They only give information. They only gave information that was how can I say, filtered information, and it was no different than Soviet Russia, except the fact of the matter is that they were much worse than Soviet Russia, because at least in communist Russia, you understand, you know that the thing is controlled no more than the Chinese would know that their media is controlled media. They would never get all sides of the question, all sides of views. Of course, here and there, some news did spring out. Some truths did spring out, but eventually, later on, they were like blips, and then later on they disappeared because the establishment never wanted to enlighten people as to what is really going on. And if you do not know this by now, then the way I figure, either you're completely or totally brainwashed with still some rationale left. But since knowing that you are such an internet expert and you know how to type and shit, you are a willfully deliberate, ignorant bastard who doesn't who really who really has a thing against wiping out Muslims off the face of this earth. But then maybe though they may have their faults and everything, but the way I figure, I don't. You call yourself a patriot of the Constitution and shit. The way I looked at your other videos, and I can tell for sure that you're really not a constitutionalist. You're just You're this piece of shit that's wrapped around a constitution that who and doesn't even know jack shit about it. I could be wrong, but the way your videos are presented, but the way you talk, that's what you look like. That's what you sound like. And seeing you like as old as my father, my God, what a waste. Anyways, Anyways, back to the history lesson. Okay, he says that Palestine never existed before the 40s or maybe the 20s. Either way, in the start of the 20th century, Palestine never existed. Either it was called Judea and stuff like that, which is bullshit, bogus bullshit. Maybe not in the books. It may not have been called, but it was called Palestine. Why was it called Palestine? Let me tell you why. First, you have to go look at the very old history of what was what this land was. This land was fought over by not just before the Jews came into the picture, before the Semites, before even the Muslims thereafter came to the picture. This land was fought over by many different races of tribes, many different empires. I guess this was a seaport of some sort. I mean, like, it was a fertile land of some sort. But this land was fought over bitterly by a lot of empires. But the oldest known, I could be wrong. If somebody wants to correct me on this, be my guest. But the oldest known civilization to have ever been in the oldest piece of civilization that has known to be there were the Egyptians. The Egyptians had their empire, and I suppose there were people before that, the Phoenicians or the Babylonians, and I guess they got their butts kicked by the Egyptians, and then the Egyptians said over, and then came the Canaanites, who sprung up in rebellion, and then they kicked the Egyptians' butts, and then the Israelis came over, and eventually, this Moses incident, and they kicked the Canaanites and the Egyptians out and set up their God chosen homeland, as I quote. So this is the original history, and then eventually it was fought by the Romans, and then the Constantinians, and then the Muslims came around the 1300s, which kicked everybody, not kicked everybody, but which eventually took over. And when they took over, then it was called Philistine, and it's been called ever since. And as far as them living in tents, I doubt it, because there were cities after cities, which are now demolished, by the way, because of Judeo-fascism and the Christian thanks, and also the neo-fascists which are in United States as well. And so the thing is that, of course, there were cities there. There were eventually there was a lot of civilization there, but then eventually then came the Zionist movement, which was, I think, around the 1800s, late 1800s, before the 20th century started, and they wanted to make a home in Palestine. And eventually I think till then the Turks took over. They had their empire, and then the British, they played both, which are known to be masters of divide and conquer. They play the Arabs, and then they play the Jews, and then but the way they do it is that they tell the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians, and then they tell the Arabs in Saudi Arabia and all that other place, the Bedouins, that if they help against them, against the Turks, against the Turks, if they help beat the Turks, we'll give them a homeland, and blah blah blah. And then they promise a similar thing to them. And then I guess later on in the 20th century, there were how can I say, bloodshed. First starting with the Arabs against the Jews over some treaty. I have to look that one up. But then later on, the Jews started to do, the Jewish establishment started to do the same thing, and eventually they wanted to take over there as well. So now this gentleman,